Last time, Rimuru traveled to the Free Academy in the Kingdom of Ingratiate to visit Shizu's former students. There, he found out that the students' overwhelming magic power was threatening to kill them. In order to save them, Rimuru managed to fuse the students with powerful spirits, who then helped them control that power. We go back to 1 month before Rimuru left the Kingdom of Ingratiate in the Free Academy. Having learned a teleportation skill from an air spirit he analyzed, Rimuru can now move freely between Rimuru City and the Kingdom of Ingratiate. Since the demon lord Carrion became his ally, Rimuru prepares to send a delegation headed by Benimaru and Rieger to Carrion's Kingdom of Eurasania, while Carrion will send one to the Jura Tempest Federation, or Tempest for short. Standing on a podium in Rimuru City, Rimuru sends the delegation off, telling them to avoid conflict and do their best to get along with their new allies. In order to properly welcome Eurasania's delegates, Rimuru had a reception hall built, ordered Shunato teach the goblins how to prepare food for their guests, and had Vesta train some of the goblins as waiting staff. In a forest at sunset, the little girl is picking berries when suddenly a giant mushroom attacks her. Just as suddenly, Yumu appears and defeats the monster mushroom. It turns out that Yumu and his companions successfully established themselves as famous champions, while also spreading the word that Tempest is a nation of friendly monsters. A few days later, while Rimuru continues teaching the children in the Free Academy and also managing his nation, Yumu and his companions return. The next day, Carrion's delegation arrives in intimidating tiger-drawn chariots, and Rimuru and the others properly welcome them. Leaving the delegation are 2 of Carrion's 3 Beasketeers, a calm woman called Albus and an arrogant tiger girl called Sufia. As soon as she arrives, Sufia sees Yumu and states that she hates humans and doesn't trust Rimuru at all. In order to show Sufia that his subordinates aren't as weak as she thinks, Rimuru tells Yumu to mock fight against Sufia. Yumu doesn't feel like fighting, but his men are fired up, so he gives in. However, when Sufia insults Rimuru one more time, Cheyenne gets angry at her and challenges her to a fight. Sufia accepts the challenge, and the 2 start fighting fiercely. While that is going on, Albus orders Grucius, the weakest demon in her brigade, to fight Yumu. Grucius isn't particularly eager to fight a human, but he listens to her. When Grucius and Yumu start fighting just as intensely as the other 2, Rimuru realizes how strong Yumu really is. Realizing Thachia and Sufia are equally strong, Cheyenne recklessly summons an incredibly powerful magic bullet and prepares to fire it. Suddenly, Albus, revealing herself to be a snake woman, stops the battle. It turns out all 3 of the demons were just testing Rimuru and his men, wanting to find out if they are worthy of being Eurasania's allies. Having seen how skilled Cheyenne and Yumu are, Albus and the others are convinced of their strength, and everyone starts getting along. While everyone is talking cheerfully, Cheyenne's massive magic bullet is still going out of control, and she can't stop it. Before it blows everything up, Rimuru tells Cheyenne to fire it at him. Trusting Rimuru, she does it, and Rimuru safely sucks it up using his gluttony skill. Having invited the delegates to the newly built reception hall, Rimuru, his friends, and the people from Eurasania enjoy some food and drinks together. When Albus realizes she has drunk all of Rimuru's apple brandy, she tells him that fruit is abundant in Eurasania. She proposes to him that they arrange a trade agreement so they can trade fruit from Eurasania for liquor from Tempest. Liking her idea, Rimuru calls forth a timid kobold called Kobe, who manages all of Tempest's merchants and puts him in charge of trade between Tempest and Eurasania. Kobe is nervous, but he accepts and immediately starts negotiating with Albus and Sufia. A few days later, the delegation from Eurasania leaves, but some of the people stay to learn new skills and techniques, since Phobio, who is currently in confinement in Eurasania, ordered Grucius to be useful to Rimuru. Grucius also stays in Rimuru City. Sometime later, Yu continues traveling and spreading word about Rimuru, while Benimaru and Rieger return from Eurasania. They are impressed by Eurasania's military, but the buildings and craftsmanship there are inferior to Tempest's. When he hears that Eurasania has huge fields full of abundant produce, Rimuru decides to send another delegation there to learn about their agriculture skills. When Benimaru suggests appointing Rieger the leader of the delegation, so Benimaru himself can stay in Tempest and continue defending it, Rimuru agrees with him. The next day, Rimuru departs to Dworgen together with the ogre girls, dwarves, Ranga, and some goblin riders because he wants to talk to Gazel the dwarf king. While they are traveling, they see Geld and the other orcs repairing the road that was destroyed when Charidis attacked. Rimuru is pleased by their efficiency and gives them barrels of beer as a reward. 4 days later, Rimuru and his escort arrive safely at Dworgen. Kajin reunites with his brother Kaido for the first time in a while, and Kaido is surprised at Rimuru's human form. In the city, they meet Dorf, the captain of the Pegasus Knights that helped them defeat Charidis, and he takes them to the king. Meanwhile, in Clayman's mansion, Clayman has been observing Rimuru the entire time and blackmails a nervous green-haired girl to do a job for him. In Dwargen, Rimuru talks to Gazel, telling him how much the dwarves and Vesta helped developing Tempest. Gazel is satisfied with the dwarves and Vesta living good lives in Tempest, but his face suddenly hardens. When Charybdis attacked Rimuru City, Gazel noticed the incredible blast of magic that defeated the beast and has been wondering what kind of weapon could do that. Nervously, Rimuru admits that the demon lord Milim helped him defeat Charybdis, and Gazel doesn't believe that the empty-headed girl he met before was a demon lord. However, he trusts Rimuru and accepts his words. Shuna enters the room and gives Gazel some apple brandy produced in Tempest, and Gazel is very impressed by its taste. When Rimuru tells him he got the apples for the brandy from Eurazania, Gazel can't believe he managed to make a trade deal with the prideful demon lord Carrion. He thinks that Tempest could soon overtake the kingdom of Falmouth as the biggest trade center. Rimuru remembers that Yumu is from Falmouth and asks Gazel about that nation. The kingdom of Falmouth is one of the biggest of all the western nations, but Gazel doesn't like their king because he's too greedy. The next day, Gazel and Rimuru gather all the residents of Dwargen to declare that their nations have become friends. Rimuru does his best to show that Tempest wants to be a bridge between monsters and humans, and the people of Dwargen give him a big applause. Satisfied with his performance, Rimuru visits the bar tended by beautiful elven witresses where he visited the last time he was in Dwargen. He also takes the goblin children with him, but tells them Shuna and Cheyenne can't find out they went there. At the bar, Rimuru and the goblins enjoy the attention of the elves and have fun. Talking to the owner of the bar, Rimuru asks her to sell Tempest apple brandy and research how much people are willing to pay for a glass of it. On their way home, Rimuru and the goblin kids come across Shuna and Cheyenne, who take Rimuru off guard. It turns out that a dim-witted goblin called Gobzo told Shuna where they are going just because she asked him. Shuna and Cheyenne end up scolding everyone, and Rimuru tries to use his cuteness to make them girls forgive him, but it doesn't work. Satisfied with their trip to Dwargen, Rimuru and the others return home. In a town somewhere, the green-haired girl who Clayman sent on an errand meets Yumu and asks him to join his party, introducing herself as a powerful magic user. Yumu tells her he doesn't need a magic user, but the girl proves herself by easily defeating him with a series of spells. Recognizing her power, Yumu accepts her into his party and learns that her name is Myron. After his trip to Dwargen, Rimuru returns to the Free Academy of Ingratia. He tells his students that they have passed their final exams for the term, and that from then on another teacher will take over for him. The students are sad, but he assures them that they will always be his precious students. Later, Yumu and his party, including Myron, arrive at Rimuru City. While Yumu is showing her around the city, Myron observes everything and realizes that both Tempest's military strength and its technological advancement make it a threat to other nations. It turns out Clayman sent her to investigate Tempest, and she joined Yumu's party just so she can infiltrate the nation. Yumu introduces Myron to Grucius, who is training with Hakiru and the Goblin Kids. When he hears that Myron beat Yumu, he is surprised. Yumu challenges him to fight Myron, and Grucius accepts. Myron isn't amused by all this and beats Grucius extremely quickly, burying him into the ground. After he gets up, Grucius decides to join Yumu's party so he can broaden his horizons and see other countries. Meanwhile, Rimuru has lunch with Mjolmil the merchant, who has been selling Rimuru's potions with great success. While they're talking, Mjolmil warns Rimuru that Tempest is on its way to become a major trade center, and that other countries, such as the Kingdom of Falmouth, might see it as a nuisance. Rimuru thinks about it, remembering how Gazel told him Falmouth's king is greedy. In the Kingdom of Falmouth, the king and his advisors are discussing Tempest. Ever since Tempest was founded, the number of merchants trading with Falmouth has decreased and their financial situation has been getting worse. A sorcerer called Raisin thinks the rise of Tempest is going to cause Falmouth's downfall and wants to do something about it before it's too late. However, the king doesn't think their army is powerful enough to go to war with them. The bald archbishop called Riheen tells him that the Western Holy Church also wants to get rid of Tempest, because they consider monsters an enemy of their god. Hearing this, the king gets an idea. If a citizen of Falmouth is attacked by someone from Tempest, the Western Church could use that as an excuse to have their Templar Knights join Falmouth's army. Later that night, Raisin gathers 3 other worlders that Falmouth has summoned: the violent Shogo, the calm Kuya, and the bratty Karara. On the king's orders, the 3 of them, together with a party of 100 knights, are to be sent to Rimuru City and cause a commotion there. The 3 other worlders are given the best food, clothes, and housing in exchange for listening to the king's orders, but Shogo and Carrera still hate this world, thinking it's boring and primitive. Meanwhile, Kiria wants to use the war to kill the people controlling them and free himself. Sometime later, Yu wakes up on Myron's lap after he was beaten up by Hikaru again. He tells her he wouldn't mind waking up like that every day, and Myron feels her heart skip a beat, realizing she loves Yu. However, she is conflicted because her heart is under Clayman's control. While Myron is walking through Rimuru City, Clayman contacts her telepathically. He threatens her into doing one last job for him, somehow knowing she has fallen in love with Yu. Later, Zoe reports to Benimaru that a large group of knights from Falmouth has been sighted heading for the city. At that moment, Albus contacts Benimaru and tells him that Milim has declared war on Eurazania, and that they are going to be attacked in 1 week's time. In Thessaly, the 3 otherworlders from Falmouth arrive disguised as civilians. Seeing the prosperous city, Shogo is angry because the monsters live better than them. In order to create a fake commotion, Carrara screams and accuses Gobzo of assaulting her. Gobzo doesn't know what she's talking about, but she pretends he pushed her to the floor, making the other humans present think the monsters in the city are violent. It turns out that Carrara has the Bewilder ability, which enables her to make her targets believe anything she says and do what she wants. Shogo and Kiria play along with her and start stirring the other humans up even more. Gobda arrives and, realizing what's happening, apologizes together with Gobzo. When Carrara continues claiming Gobzo attacked her, Gobda accuses her of lying. He says that Gobzo would never be interested in someone like her, which makes everyone laugh and relaxes the atmosphere. Carrara gets furious and uses her Bewilder skill to tell everyone to die. However, her ability doesn't work even though the ones who hear it are supposed to die instantly. Shuna and Cheyenne show themselves and tell her they negated her ability. Shuna politely asks the 3 of them to leave, and when they refuse, Cheyenne tells them she will fight them. Shogo and Kiria aren't intimidated and prepare to fight. Meanwhile, Clayman tells Myron that her new mission is turning Rimuru City into an anti-magic area so that they can't communicate with the outside anymore. Clayman looks forward to a war breaking out and wants to make it more interesting. Grucius finds Myron and tells her she's been acting strange. When he mentions receiving a message about Milim declaring war on Eurazania, Myron realizes that wasn't part of Clayman's plans. She thinks that he might go berserk and destroy the whole city in his anger if Myron doesn't succeed at her mission. When Grucius tells her he knows she is a demon, Myron tells him he is right. Revealing her true form, she tells him that she considers him a friend but has no other choice than to fight him. Grucius guesses correctly that Clayman is using her for his plans, but Yu interrupts him, having heard everything. Yu doesn't care that Myron is a demon and tells her he loves her anyway. Myron is happy at first, but then tells him the Myron he knows is a fabrication she made to fool him. However, he doesn't care and just hugs her. Suddenly, a violet light envelops Myron and she starts casting a spell. While she is casting an barrier spell over the entire territory of Tempest, the Archbishop Rahim is casting another one. Benimaru notices he can't contact anyone outside anymore. Meanwhile, Cheyenne fights Shogo, until she suddenly loses strength in her body and falls to her knees. In Ingratia, Rimuru finally leaves his students. While he's traveling, Rimuru feels a strange presence and orders Ranga to hide inside his shadow. The Great Sage tells him he has been enclosed within a barrier, and he can't use any of his spatial skills to get out. Out of nowhere, an image of Zoe looking wounded appears and tells Rimuru the Tempest has been attacked before disappearing. Using his resist skill, Rimuru manages to counter the barrier to some degree, but the Great Sage tells him his skills will still be weaker than usual. Suddenly, the black-haired woman who has been following him before appears, and Rimuru realizes she put up the barrier around him. Rimuru tries greeting the woman politely and acting oblivious, but she already knows he is the leader of Tempest. She simply tells him his city stands in her way and that she is going to destroy it. In Rimuru City, Kiria fights against Gobda and overpowers him. Before he can kill him, Hikaru arrives and deflects his sword. The two start fighting, but Kiria turns out stronger since one of the barriers weakens monsters and Hikaru isn't able to use his full strength. Finally, Kiria cuts him and defeats him. After that, he starts approaching Shuna, but Gobzo stands in his way to protect her. However, Kiria just lost and swings his sword down on him. Nearby, Cheyenne continues fighting fiercely against the arrogant Shogo, but she is also weakened. When the knights from Falmouth arrive, Shogo leaves her to them, claiming she attacked him first. The knights rush into the city, their captain called Fulgen announcing that they're going to save the innocent humans from the monsters. Seeing a lone goblin girl in the way of the horses, Cheyenne runs toward her to rescue her. Meanwhile, the black-haired woman introduces herself to Rimuru as Hinata Sakaguchi, the captain of the Holy Knights in the Holy Empire of Lubelius. Rimuru then realizes he recognizes her name. Even though Rimuru just wants to talk, Hinata attacks him, not caring what a monster has to say. She thinks Rimuru killed Shizu, and she wants to avenge her. While doing his best to dodge Hinata's powerful attacks, Rimuru gets hit and realizes his pain nullification doesn't work anymore, just like most of his other skills. The Great Sage tells him that her attack called Dead End Rainbow don't affect the physical body, but rather the spiritual body of her target, and that only 3 more attacks will kill him. As they continue fighting, Rimuru gets hit 2 more times. Hinata tells him Shizu was the only person who was kind towards her and swears she will avenge her. Rimuru realizes that someone must have told her that Rimuru killed Shizu and made him out to be a horrible monster. Rimuru finally decides to counterattack, but Hinata perfectly predicts every one of his attacks and blocks them, making them useless. However, Rimuru doesn't give and gets an idea. He calls Ifrit from his body and attacks Hinata together with him, but Hinata once again dodges and blocks all the attacks. Suddenly, Ifrit starts screaming in pain and Rimuru is forced to call them back. It turns out Hinata has a skill called Usurper that allows her to steal her opponent's skills. She tried to steal Ifrit, but Rimuru called him back in the nick of time. Realizing he will die if he doesn't fight back, Rimuru tells Hinata that he has no choice but to defeat her. He uses his Gluttony skill at the same time as Hinata uses her Dead End Rainbow attack. Losing consciousness, Rimuru absorbs Hinata's sword and turns into a strange monster. Hinata tries restraining him using a barrier, but he quickly breaks it. Hinata then summons 5 spirits and uses them to perform a complicated spell that is supposed to disintegrate Rimuru completely. After casting the immensely powerful spell, Hinata sees that there is nothing left of Rimuru and leaves, thinking she has killed him. However, it turned out Rimuru is still alive. In the middle of the fight, he made a clone of himself and hid himself in a patch of grass, while Hinata fought his fake body. Summoning Reinga back out of his shadow, Rimuru prepares to return to Rimuru City. However, the Great Sage tells him he can't teleport there because the city has been isolated from the rest of the world by a barrier. Instead, he teleports himself to Veldora's cave and meets Vesta, Gabiru, Soi, and his ninja squad. Nobody knows has been happening in Tempest since it has been completely cut off from the rest of the world. Soi saw the army of the Kingdom of Falmouth approach the city, so he concludes that they raised the barrier. Leaving the cave, they all go inspect the barrier. Rimuru finds out the barrier is a multi-layered barrier, consisting of 1 anti-magic barrier from the inside and 1 barrier that reduces magic density from the outside. While he goes after the one casting the anti-magic barrier, he tells Soi and the others to find the person casting the other barrier. Passing through the 2 barriers, Rimuru enters the burning city full of wounded citizens. He finds Rigurd and Kaijin, but gets distracted when he hears Benimaru fighting against someone. In an alley, Benimaru is trying to capture Myron, but Gracious and Yunu are protecting her. When Yu was knocked out, Gracious turns into a wolfman and attacks Benimaru, but Benimaru easily defeats him. At that moment, Rimuru joins them and stops the fight. Rimuru finds out that Myron is the one who cast the anti-magic barrier spell. Yu bows before Rimuru and apologizes for betraying him, but explains that he wants to protect Myron. Myron doesn't want Yu to stand up for her and regrets helping Clayman start the war. She leads Rimuru to the plaza where there are dozens of dead citizens' bodies laid on the floor. One of the goblins says that everything is Rimuru's fault because he established the rule that the citizens of Tempest can't attack humans. Rimuru starts thinking that Goblin is right, but does his best to calm down and look at the situation rationally. He invites everyone, including Myron, into the meeting room. Before the knights left, their captain called Fulgen announced that they will return in a week after they have consulted with the Western Holy Church about what they will do with Tempest. Hearing this, Rimuru concludes that Falmouth and the church have been working together from the beginning. He tells Mjalmil to notify the Kingdom of Blumen about Falmouth's attack, and then asks Myron to tell him everything about herself. Myron tells him Clayman is her master, and that he has complete control over her, since he stole her heart using his ability called Marionette Heart. Having heard enough, Rimuru sends her into confinement. Benimaru then leads him to see the wounded. Visiting Hakuryu and Gapta, Rimuru finds out that healing potions can't heal their wounds since they were inflicted by Kyuya's spatial skills. However, Rimuru manages to absorb the spatial magic with his Gluttony skill and heal the 2 of them. Suddenly, Rimuru realizes Shion is nowhere to be seen and asks the others where she is. Everyone turns silent and they bring Rimuru back to the plaza. Rimuru sees Shion's dead body among the others and Gapta finds out that Gobzo has also died. Rimuru gets incredibly angry for a second, but manages to hold back enough to tell the others he needs to be alone for a while. Rimuru replicates Shizu's mask from his memory and puts it on. Feeling confused, he wonders if he was wrong about involving his nation with the monsters. Just before he decides to lay the deceased citizens to rest, the three adventurers Cable, Aaron, and Guido arrive and stop him. Aaron tells him there's a fairy tale about bringing the dead back to life, and he gets interested. He doesn't want to get his hopes up for nothing, but decides to listen to her. As the sun rises, he finally finds a ray of hope. At that moment, Zoe notices the Western Holy Church's forces camping around the city on all sides. He notices that each team is guarding some kind of magic device and concludes that the devices are the source of the remaining barrier. He contacts Rimuru, but he tells him to just continue observing them for now. At the plaza, Aaron starts telling Rimuru the fairy tale, which is a story from the country of Thalion. The story is about the dragon princess, who was the daughter of a human and a dragon. One day, her father made a clone of himself in the form of a baby dragon and gave it to her as a companion. The two of them loved each other, but one day the evil king killed the baby dragon in order to control the princess. The princess went mad with grief and destroyed the king and his entire nation, numbering thousands of people, which made her become a demon lord. Miraculously, when she became a demon lord, the baby dragon came back to life. However, it has lost its soul, so it came back as an evil monster that destroyed everything in her path. The princess was then forced to seal the dragon, even though it hurt her deeply. Hearing the story, Rimuru realizes he could become a demon lord to revive his friends. He could even restore their souls, since there is a small possibility that the souls are held back by the two barriers. Aaron reveals that her full name is Arione Grimwald, and that she is the princess of the royal family of the sorceress dynasty of Thalion. It also turns out that Cable and Guido are actually her guards that left the country with her when she left because she wanted to experience the freedom of adventuring. She says that if Rimuru became a demon lord in the same way as the princess in the fairy tale, the people from Thalion could realize she was involved, but she doesn't care since she wants to save the people of Rimuru City. At that moment, Zoe reports that 20,000 men from Falmouth and the Western Holy Church are marching in the direction of the city. Rimuru visits Myron, who is together with Grucius and Yu, and bluntly tells her she will have to die as a punishment. As soon as he hears that, Grucius tries attacking Rimuru, but Benimaru stops. Realizing she will die, Myron kisses Yu and tells him he was the only man she ever loved. When Yu tries stopping Rimuru, he simply restrains him with a spell. Yu begs Rimuru not to kill Myron, but Rimuru coldly pierces her chest with his hand, leaving Yu in despair. After a few seconds, Myron is suddenly alive again, to Yu's relief. It turns out that Rimuru realized the artificial heart claimant implanted into Myron contained a listening device, so he destroyed it and replaced it with a new artificial heart, freeing her from Clayman's influence. When Rimuru asks Myron to help him bring his friends back to life, she accepts, thankful to him for giving her freedom. Rimuru then asks Yu for an unexpected favor. He wants him to become the new king of Falmouth. After Rimuru wipes out Falmouth's entire army, he wants Yu to replace the current king and establish diplomatic relations with Tempest. Yu is shocked, but the others support him and he agrees to do it. Later, Rimuru gathers his most trustworthy subordinates and holds a meeting. Immediately, he declares to everyone that he wants to become a demon lord. The others are speechless at first, but Rimuru explains that he is doing it for a chance to revive their fallen friends, and they start understanding him. For the first time, Rimuru admits that he is actually a reincarnated human from the same world as the Otherworlders. He thinks that he could have protected everyone if he didn't spend so much time in Gracia with the Otherworlder children. But the others agree that they are actually to blame for relying too much on him to protect them. They all want to follow him whatever he decides to do and don't care if he's a former human either. Cajun then asks how they should treat the humans from now on. Rimuru tells him humans can be both good and evil, and thinks it depends on their environment. This is why he wants to create an environment where humans can learn to be good neighbors to the monsters so they can all live together in peace.